guests. Welcome to the Audit Committee of the 1st of October. You'll notice that I'm in a different chair. We have had apologies from Councillor Rippington, and therefore he's asked me to chair for this meeting. He has done all of the preparation work for this meeting, so we'll credit him with everything that's been predetermined, and I just have to run us through the next couple of hours. So, as is traditional, safety information, there is no planned fire drill, so in the event of an alarm, we will exit using the doors as signposted and go to the cathedral, to the right. Now, in terms of introductions, I am the chair of the committee for the day, along with the vice chair, Councillor Nicholas Goons. We have a lot of officers present who will be speaking according to their position in the agenda, and Councillor Rippington has amended the agenda so that we can optimise the use of their time and they can get back to their important financial work. And on that point, I could run through the changes to the agenda, but it'll be difficult. So, essentially we're starting with 10, then going to 9, then 19, 16, 13, 11, 12, 14, 15, 17, 18. I think it's best that I just introduce the item and give everyone 10 seconds to find it on the paperwork before we go into it. But the chair has amended the agenda to make the best use of the officers' time, which I hope we will all support. So officially, maybe have the apologies for ourselves, please.
Certainly, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Rippington and from the independent member Simon Cookson.
And that makes 11 hours. So are there any declarations of interest for the committee, please? Councillor Wilkins.
Yes, Chair, I'd like to declare that I'm a non-executive director of the Hall Homes.
Thank you.
Yes, Chair, I'd like to declare that I'm a non-executive director of Bristol Waste and also the Bristol Port Company.
Thank you. Councillor Harper. So those declarations have been noted. So the minutes of the previous meeting, this is to approve the minutes. Are there any observations, or can we confirm that it is a correct record of the last meeting, please? Anyone would care to propose that they are correct? Councillor Noble, propose? Malik seconded, and that is agreed. Thank you. The action sheet. Now, this is to look for any comments on the action sheet. I think that Ms Taylor provided us with one additional action by email, which I'll ask is recorded in the minutes of this meeting. Any other comments? Councillor Logan.
The Bristol Beacon item, the action is to have further feedback from City Council management. I wasn't sure if we know when to expect that. There's a reference in the Q3 plans to a capital project portfolio management. I wasn't sure if that is meant to be the same thing, or whether there's a specific action expected.
In the forward plan?
Chair, you get the next report in the audit committee for the 25th of November. It's also indicated on the action sheet as well.
Okay, so I think our position then is to note that. With no further comments, I take that as noted. The chair's business. I have none, and Councillor Rippington didn't allow me to any. So then we'll move to the public forum. So we have received both statements and questions, and I'd like to ask if the statement from Mr. Ackroyd, if he would like to present that to us. We have, of course, received it and read it.
I have two statements. I'm not sure how that works. So, the first statement is about the governance policy. It is very easy to write a policy about principles of good governance or to declare an ecological emergency. Living up to those principles is much harder. This council received an enforcement notice from the ICO due to its poor handling of FOI requests. This council is currently appealing that enforcement notice, but who made the decision to appeal the enforcement notice is a secret, and nor are we allowed to know the reasons why the enforcement notice is being appealed. This looks hypocritical in the extreme. I was hoping for better from a new regime. And the second statement was regarding CR 52 and 60. The problems in the housing department have obviously existed for years, and it's going to take years before this council is compliant with the fire safety laws. The current estimate is late 2026. This is a massive failure in governance. The thing that I find most disturbing is that the council is still being coy and describing events using euphemisms and passive phrasing rather than using clear language to describe what happened. For example, reading the reports, it seems that some workers and tenants have been exposed to asbestos due to poor record keeping, but the number exposed and whether the exposure was properly reported is just very vague. There needs to be an investigation of how this failure of governance happened so that we can learn lessons from it. In particular, it would be good to interview the temporary staff who, before they leave for new jobs, or being replaced by permanent members of staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ackroyd. I invite the committee to bear those points in mind when we get to the relevant items, which seem to be the local government ombudsman report and the corporate risk report. We also have questions submitted in advance, which have been answered in writing and published, and those are from Mr. Aldreeve. If he's in the room, he's entitled to ask a supplementary, but he is not. In which case, the public forum is complete, and so I'll move on to note the work programme, which is published in the agenda pack. There's been some discussion by email on the work programme in recent months, so are we content that that reflects discussion? No objections, so I'll consider it noted. So we're moving on then to the substantive reports, and it's been suggested to me that if we look at the statement of accounts item 10 first, then the independent auditor's report follows item 9 more naturally from that. So I'll invite Tony Whitlock to introduce item 10 now, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is the latest version of the Statement of Accounts, and we think that it's pretty much complete now. There are a few outstanding items that we still need to finish off for Grant Thornton, but substantially this is the set of accounts. There were a number of fairly minor issues that we've changed in the accounts, and those are listed in detail in Grant Thornton's report. But the only adjustment of any real merit was the £2.5 million adjustment to DSG. And this has effectively resulted in simply a transfer from unusable reserves to usable reserves. so no impact on the income expenditure account there at all, just a swap between lines on the balance sheet. And that is in effect the only real adjustment we've actually had to make this year, which is good news. And you know, the audit is appreciably completed now, and we would certainly, as a finance team, like to thank Grant Thornton, Barry's team, because we've really got this done in record time and in a really, really good, organised way. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So the committee saw these accounts at a previous meeting, so we're dealing with the update to it, and I see that Councillor Hutt has a question on those updates.
Thank you, I note that in the external audit report, it states that the value of the unquoted equity investment in Bristol Corporate Shipping Limited is 35 million. Last year it was 24 million, so it's a big increase. I think that the port company is actually a huge success story for Bristol, actually. And I just wondered what was driving that increase, or if I could see the calculation, or perhaps a reconciliation between last year and this year.
We can certainly share the calculation with you. I think my colleague John wants to say anything.
Yeah, I think the main drivers for the increase was the actual grade rating used in the department calculation. So increased it from 2.5% to 3%. And I think we also, there was higher dividends than previous years, so that was also formed the basis of the calculation as well.
Okay, thanks, John. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind putting that in writing to me, that would be much appreciated. Thanks a lot.
An action for the tracker. Thanks. I see Wilcox and then that one, please.
Thank you, Chair. Tony, was there any interaction with the general public about the accounts? Please.
There is a full 30 working day public inspection of the account. So any Bristol ratepayer or journalist has that opportunity to ask effectively as many questions as they like. Yeah. So
did any members of the public avail themselves of the opportunity to do that?
they did indeed.
Good. How many?
Only the one.
Right. And were their questions satisfied?
Yes, they were. Yes.
Excellent. That's good to hear. Thank you.
Councillor Lamar, please.
I was interested in the item about procurement breaches. The number of procurement breaches of the councils continued to rise 16% in 22-23 for a contract value with a value of £73 million, which to me felt like a concerning amount. I see that lots of mitigations have been put in place and that percentage is now decreased considerably. I was wondering if you could tell us the amount of procurement breaches there were that totaled the £73 million. Was it lots of small breaches, and what perhaps was the biggest breach? Could you give us an example of one of those procurement breaches and what project that applied to?
This is in the annual governance statement, isn't it, I think, this particular comment. I may have to defer to colleagues if they know. We would need to come back to you on that one, but we can bring you that information.
Thank you.
Okay. I see one more from Councillor Hunter. Reminder, we're talking about changes made to the accounts since last version.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the audit report mentions an issue with the bank reconciliation, where there's reconciling items that are not true reconciling items. I think I understand it, but I just want to get this clear. Is this where a bank statement's imported, it posts the transactions, but they don't automatically match up? Is that
Exactly that, yeah. So we did quite, I mean, the issue, of course, with some of the audit recommendations, of course, we brought 22-23's accounts in March, so some of those recommendations won't have been entirely addressed by the time we've got this set of accounts and audit recommendations. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The bank rec imports the transactions, and then there's a matching concept that matches the items in what we call our income management system with the bank statement. So if somebody's paid in, thinks they've paid in £100 but only paid in £99.99, there will be an imbalance. What we aim to do is every year to look at those and make a decision to write off the short notice, if you like, which is, and as the report mentioned, what we're talking about here is quite a lot of very, very low value transactions, but we will be addressing it, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Tony.
Right, I think we've exhausted questions on the report, so our comments then, we've got a few questions as actions, but otherwise no further comments, I don't think, for the report, so we are ready to note it. As a substantive, would anyone like to move that we note the report? Yep, I've got Blanken's up first, and I would assume Hucker as a seconder. So can we take that as noted? So then, logically, we move on to the external auditor's report, which is item 9. So I'll invite our lead from Grant Thornton to present this.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this will be a bit of a Grant Thornton show, so I'll kick off and then I'll hand over to my colleague Chris, who will take you through the detail of the report, and then Beth to summarise some of the other matters in our relation to our extra powers. I think I wanted to start though by echoing really what Tony said around the way that both the audit team and the finance team have worked together to get this audit into a position where we are almost close to signing the audit opinion. This marks a remarkable turnaround in the performance of the audits over recent years. I didn't think I would ever be in a position in early October to say that we were in a position to nearly sign off Bristol City Council's accounts. So that's a massive testament to the change in working practices that's happened in your finance team. And members, if I may be so bold, I would be strongly recommending you're quite proud of those finance team in doing that. And I think it's also important to note, as Tony said, we did identify only a very small number of errors. So again, that's really important. These are a complex set of financial statements with lots of moving parts. And again, the fact that we've not identified that many errors, and indeed the one that Tony identified around the DSG, is a common issue that we're identifying in a number of authorities where DSG surpluses have been made, not least because many authorities are not used to making surpluses in DSG. So again, there is no issue in relation to that. Now, on page 29 of your pack, it does identify a number of areas which were outstanding at the point of drafting this report. The majority of those have now been closed down, but I'll let Cressa take you through the detail of the report. So again, I just want to finish by saying a massive thank you to the team, both mine and Tony's team. The audit opinion isn't in a position to be signed yet. Due to a change in the National Audit Code of Practice, we're not able to sign the audit until the value for money work has been completed. And my colleague is working on the value for money work at the moment. That will be completed by the time of the November meeting, which was in line with our original plans. So, and again, we're working closely with officers to make sure that work can be concluded so that we can issue the opinion in early December. So I'll hand over to Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. So we'll take the report as read, so we'll just go through some of the key elements of the report, starting on page 33 of the report back, or page 8 of our report. So this sets out the materiality level. And for the Council, this remains consistent as to what we have reported in the audit plan to the Audit Committee last May. However, for the group, we have updated this following revision in our risk assessment. So any misstatements about the trivial matters figure is reported within this report. Moving on to the next page, this area is relating to significant risk section. So our work on management override of controls is now completed, and we have not identified any instances of such in our testing. On pages 36 and 38 of the report, or 11 and 13, sorry, 36 and 38 of the report back, or 11 and 13 of our report. So this details...
Yes, can we just check page numbers?
Yes.
So I think that 36 is titled Independence and Ethics, which doesn't seem to be what you're talking about, so maybe we've got the...
Is that 36 our report?
36 of the back.
Thank you. I'm sure the committee understood that. I needed to be told.
Sorry. So 36 and 38 of that report back, this details the work we have completed on valuation of land and building and investment properties. So we have now completed our work on this area, and we are pleased to report that we have not identified any issues on our testing, and we are able to conclude that the valuation of land and buildings and investment properties are materially accurate as at year end. And then on page 37 of the back, or page 12 of our report, so this details the work we have completed on the valuation of council dwellings. So this work is substantially complete. However, we identified an error wherein an incorrect property type had been allocated to a non-beacon population. So we are currently evaluating the assessment of the management in relation to the impact of that error on the year-end valuation of council dwellings. So once we conclude our testing on that area, we expect to report the outcome of that on our final audit findings report, which we expecting to report in the November audit committee. And then on page 40 of the report pack, or page 15 of our audit findings report, this relates to the pension fund liability valuations. Our work on this area is still in progress, and we are awaiting for the pension fund assurance letter, and we are currently assessing an emerging issue in relation to IFRIC 14. So we have discussed this with management, and they are in discussion with their actuary and the pension fund to obtain an updated assessment in relation to this. So once we have that, we are going to determine the further procedures that we are expecting to do. And again, we are expecting to conclude our testing on that before the November audit committee and report the final outcome of our testing at audit committee. And then on page 43 of the report back, this sets out the key judgment and estimates in our audit. So we have not identified any significant issues in relation to the accounting estimates. There are areas that are still in progress, and again, our final assessment will be included in our final audit findings report. And then on page 49 of the report back, this relates to our commentary on IFRS 16. So this is a new standard that will be implemented in 24-25 financial year, and management have preparations in place in relation to the implementation, but we recommend that they kickstart these preparations as soon as possible, because this is not a simple piece of work. And then on page 51 of the report back, or 26 of our audit findings report, this relates to the digital audit processes. As seen on the table, we have not encountered any issues in relation to the use of the audit tool. And then we move on to the appendices. So on page 65 of the back, or page 40 of our report, this relates to the control recommendations we have raised during the audit. So we have raised 7 recommendations and have received management responses in relation to this. So as usual, we will be following up on our next audit with regards to the progress of these recommendations. And then on page 67 of the back, this relates to the follow-up of prior year recommendations. So the first item has now been completed, and again, we are pleased to report that the recommendation had been sufficiently addressed. So that leaves only 3 out of 11 recommendations from prior year that are yet to be fully addressed. And then on page 70 of the pack, or page 45 of our report, this relates to the audit adjustments. This is the one discussed by Tony, which relates to the DSG in-year surplus. And then the next page sets out the various misclassification and disclosure changes. And then on page 73 of the report back, or page 48 of our report, we have identified one unadjusted misstatement. So this is comfortably below our materiality and does not impact our anticipated audit opinion. So we are satisfied to leave this as unadjusted. We have raised a control recommendation in relation to this, which is detailed in Appendix B. I will now hand over to Beth to talk through objections rate and value for money arrangements.
Thank you, Krista. Just to take you through a couple of other areas of the report, and then we're happy to take any questions. So you'll note on page 30 of our report, we update you on the progress of an objection that was received on the financial statements. Councillor Wilcox asked a question about the public inspection period. As with every statement of accounts, there is a prescribed public inspection period which allows any member of the local area to inspect the accounts and ask questions. They can also do what is called raising an objection with us as the external auditors. We did not receive any such objections in 23-24, however we did receive one in 22-23, and we wanted to update the committee that sometimes these matters can take a while to resolve. We have completed the vast majority of the work on that objection for 22-23 financial statements. We are in the process of going through the various different stages of review that those final outputs are required to go through, both internally within the firm, and we also go through review processes with PSAA, who are the appointed, the bodies who appoint us as auditors. So we are expecting to be able to conclude on that work within October, which will mean that as soon as that is completed, we can issue the certificate and formally conclude the 22-23 financial statements audit and our wider responsibilities as fully closed. The audit itself was closed back in March earlier this year, so it's just the objection work that remains outstanding there. So we're providing a slight update on that. We also set out on pages 31 through to 34 of our report the risks of significant weakness in relation to the value for money arrangements. For members' benefit, as I'm conscious that there are a number of new members on the committee, a risk of significant weakness is an area of focus that we as external auditors will consider as part of our work in assessing the value for money arrangements at an organisation. And they cover three distinct areas: financial sustainability, governance, and the 3 E's. You will see on page 33 we have a nice little RAG-rated table here which sets out the outcome of our value for money work in the previous period, and where some significant weaknesses were identified, we have included a risk of significant weakness in the current period, which is set out on the following page. We have also identified 2 further risks of significant weakness. These are, as I said, areas that we will be looking into in a little more detail, and they are set out on that page, totaling 4 areas of significant weakness that we will look into. That is over and above the standard work that we will undertake at every organisation in relation to financial sustainability, governance, and, as we call it, the 3 E's, improving economy and efficiency and effectiveness as part of our value for money arrangements work. Finally, in one of the appendices, it's Appendix E, I think, yes, Appendix E, we set out the fees for the audit. You will see that we have on page 51 of our report set out both the scale fee, a proposed ISO 315 fee variation, which was included and reported in our audit plan brought to this committee earlier in the year. And we expect a fee for the use of an external audit expert to be in the region of 5,000. The other fee that is currently not included within our report, but we will report it to members in November once we've finalised our work, is any additional fee in relation to the additional procedures we need to undertake in relation to IFRIC 14, which is the emerging issue that Chris mentioned in relation to the pension liability. So the fee itself remains broadly in line with the scale fee, but we are expecting a small number of additional variations, and we'll report those back to members once we've discussed and agreed with management as part of our usual processes. We also set out a proposed fee, final fee for the 22-23 objection work, which we hadn't previously reported because we weren't able to reasonably estimate the length of time that objection work would take. And again, that will be subject to final conclusion procedures, and we expect to be able to bring a final confirmed fee as part of our meeting. That was all that we wanted to draw out, Chair, so we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that presentation. So I'll pass to the councillors for questions to either our auditors or perhaps our officers, if there are anything you want a response to. Councillor Wilcox first.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions about Appendix 3 and possibly 4 or 5, I'm not sure.
Give us page numbers.
Yes, I certainly can. Page 58 of our bundle or page 33 of the report. We talk about financial sustainability as being an issue, area of significant weakness. Are we going to include, as part of the scope of that financial sustainability, the housing revenue, the fact that we haven't been looking after our housing stock correctly, and in terms of the fact that we've had to refer ourselves to the regulator of social housing because of the backlog of repairs to our social housing estate, and the limited assurance we got from internal audit in our last meeting. That seems to be a major area of financial sustainability, and the fact that we haven't got money to repair our housing stock. Will you be actually investigating that area, please?
I'll be free to answer that one, Chair. So if you go one page further on, the page you referred to, page 33 of our report, is the outcome of the prior year VFM findings. That wasn't a finding in the previous period. What we have, however, noted is that that is listed as a risk of significant weakness. It is, however, listed under the governance section rather than the financial sustainability section. As part of our work, things do cross over between the three areas, so it's not a strict review that will only look at governance arrangements. We will look at all arrangements in place, and we fit the risks in the area that they are most appropriate, but it doesn't mean that we won't consider the financial side as part of our work.
That is good to hear. And going on to that page 34 of your report 59, quick bundle. The first line talks about, since we reported on 22-23, we have undertaken our detailed planning work and identified 4 risks of significant weakness. You only list 3 on that page. What's happened to the 4th risk? Is that a typo?
So I think the 4th risk is the 2 separate paragraphs within the governance section. Apologies that that's not abundantly clear. They are 2 separate areas, but I appreciate some bullet points probably would have made that clearer for you.
Okay, that would be useful, yes, because it looks like there's only 3 there. And the following page, page 35 rather, we seem to be going straight from Appendix 3 to Appendix 5.
Thank you.
Is that another
that's just a simple numbering error from our perspective.
Good. Wouldn't want to be missing a whole section. Thank you.
Very good observations there. Just before Councillor McAllister, I'm going to dwell on 33 a little longer. So, lower rag rating. I'd like to see a bit more green in them. Can you compare this year's output, i.e. 2 grades through an amber, with last year's? Do you have that available to us?
So not at this stage, because the value for money work is just in its infancy. When we come back to committee in November, we will be bringing an updated version of this report, but we will also bring what we call our auditor's annual report. That will set out that same rag rating for both the 22-23 audit, which is the one that's shown on page 33, and it will also bring an updated version for 23-24 once we've concluded our work.
Thank you. So this is in progress, and we'll get that in the next report.
Thank you very much. Is that all right? This mic seems a bit worn up. Thanks very much for this report. It's an impressive piece of work, as always. I had a couple of queries. On page 13 of your report concerning the valuation of investment property, I know you confirmed the majority of our investment properties are valued by Avison Young. Do you consider there might be a risk there or a potential conflict of interest, especially given that Avison Young are responsible for a lot of private developments also in the city, if we are overly reliant on them, or is it good to have that comprehensive relationship with them, in your opinion?
I'll take that. So I think the important thing is making sure that you engage valuers and valuation experts that provide the expertise that you need. I think it's a great question around whether or not there is a conflict of interest in relation to their activity in the market compared to the services that you provide. They will have appropriate ethical standards in place, but I guess that's down to the procurement decisions that your team go through in determining which experts to engage. We've not identified any concerns from our perspective, and we engage our own external valuation experts to look at the independence and the competence and the experience of the valuers, and we also look at the valuations that they've derived to ensure that they are appropriate and in line with our expectations. So there is a theoretical risk there, but that should be managed, and hopefully our engagement of valuation experts should mitigate that.
Well, thank you very much, that's reassuring. And then moving down a few pages on the page about cyber security, this is more a question for management, in fact, because this has been a persistent theme at Audit Committee about the fact we don't seem to have an adequate cybersecurity strategy, and I noticed that management response to this item was agreed that we are working on compliance. We may be coming back to this later with the risk registers, but I was wondering if management was in position now to give a quick update on that, or should we come back to that later? Thank you.
I think that's appropriate.
Chair, if I could, we considered a report at the last SNR committee in relation to our cyber arrangements, and there are recommendations in that which we are pursuing.
Thank you. And finally, the audits on Bristol Holding Limited, Bristol Waste Company Limited, and Gorham Homes Limited, those have been conducted. Will we get sight of those, or is that separate to this audit committee?
I understand we have an item later on the agenda.
Oh, did I'm so sorry, I might have misread something. My apologies.
Will we cover that question later in the agenda?
Chair, this committee does not receive the statement from Bristol West. As part of the work of the communicate assurance from Bristol West and Gorham. But this committee does not discuss the statements from the companies.
So we will come to that. I wanted to dwell actually in the same section where Councillor McAllister was working the follow-up of prior year recommendations. So that's pages 67, 68, 69, and just to ask our officers about those which have been recommended but not implemented. And cyber security is indeed one of those. The other was bank reconciliation. And so one more there. No, just the bank reconciliation. And the partial compliance in terms of infrastructure assets. So that's page 68.
Thanks, Chair. The bank reconciliation one is underway. As I mentioned earlier on, the issue is, of course, that we brought the 22-23 accounts to you at the end of March. So, and they went straight into 23-24. So some of those recommendations are going to not be reflected in the 23-24 accounts or in this report. But in all of the ones that were in progress, they are working toward that conclusion now.
Okay, so the time duration between one report and the next report made it impossible to implement all the recommendations we wanted.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do I have any further questions? Yes, from Councillor Laban.
My question is about the fees, because we were looking at value for money. And I saw that in 2019-20 we paid for the external audit £211,000. But this year we're paying £641,000, so that's over a 300% increase in the space of 4 years. And I know that, for example, Bristol's allotment here won't stand for a 300% rent rise, so I wondered why we're standing for it. I know that the public sector audit appointments organises the fees, but I wondered whether you could justify how there's been such an enormous increase.
Absolutely happy to take that question through you, Chair. If you go back further than the year that you looked at, by another 5 to 10 years, you will see that the fee that was paid for the Bristol City audit was in the region of the fee that is currently being levied. So there's been a cyclical movement. There was a pricing rush, whereby audit fees were driven down by changes in the market, movement away from the use of the Audit Commission as the primary auditor for the vast majority of local government organisations, to tenders with the private firms, and the fees gradually reduced and reduced and reduced. But at the same time, the level of work that was expected by us as auditors from our regulator increased exponentially, which led to an unfortunate situation where if you review various audit findings reports from the last 2 to 3 years, you will see that there are large numbers of lines disclosed within the fees sections of those reports for fee variations, which we would have to submit to public sector audit appointments for approval. They would then consider and either accept or reject. They would discuss them with officers as we would. It was a much more long-winded process that gave neither authorities nor auditors any real expectation of what the fees would actually be. So therefore the PSAA undertook a full reset in order to bring the market back to the place that it should be at, and probably should have been at for quite a while, so that those fees can be as expected, meaning that the level of fee variation submissions is expected to be much smaller going forward, giving both of us certainty on expenditure and income.
Thank you. Thanks for that. That's very helpful to have that background. The other thing I noted is that contracts that the Bristol City Council awards for worth over £100,000 are supposed to include 20% social value contribution, and it wasn't clear from the report what the social value contribution Grant Thornton were making to the city is.
Thank you. Again, our fees are derived by PSA Limited, so they are the appointing authority. So I'm not sure how they take into account that social value element. I think the other thing that I would emphasise that Beth didn't, I think her response was excellent, I've made a note of it, say in the future as well, was the external audit market, let's be broken, in the public sector is broken, and there has been a reset. But we are currently looking at nearly 1,000 sets of accounts that have not been certified for the last 5 years or so, and we know as a firm that actually we've got a very good track record of signing off those accounts. Again, Bristol is in that position where we have that, but we are picking up audits where they haven't been signed off for up to 5 years. So what we're trying to do, PSA have done, is reset that market to make sure that it's sustainable going forward. And Beth does make a valid point that if you go back 15 years, the fees were in fact higher.
Thanks for that. And can I just say I'm pleased to know that you found the accounts much easier to finish this year.
I think Councillor Lamb does make an interesting point there. If I replay that answer, is that 5 years ago competition was introduced into the market, fees were reduced hugely, but potentially underbidding resulted in additional fees being added on later, which is what we have seen in many contracts. But then the organisation reset the market and put all of the fees up. So I guess I should ask our head of audit if our external auditors are subject to a tender arrangement, and if there is fee bidding still.
Chair, the council would have at some point decided to go with PSA arrangements. There is an opportunity for local authorities to decide to procure external audit directly from the market, but that was obviously a decision made some years back to basically go with the national procurement process.
Is that a decision which is ever revisited?
Chair, at the end of the term, it could be revisited if the council sees value for money opportunity, if they understand that to be best in the local interest. But it's fair to say that I believe pretty much every local authority has gone with the national. There is still one out there on their own.
Sorry, through the chair. There's not one. So I think there were 5 authorities that didn't directly procure in the previous contract round. I think that reduced down to, I'm not sure if it's all of them are in the current contract, just because of the nature of actually you do get a better rate. It doesn't seem like it, but you do get a better rate if you go out to market with everybody else, and that's what the authorities that went outside band, and therefore they went into the national procurement. To answer your question, the contract is for 5 years. This is the first of the 5 years, but the next decision that you'll need to make as to whether you go alone or within the contract or nationally will probably be in a couple of years or so. It's a long process.
Just to assure the committee, I think Councillor Wilcox and Councillor Aka and Paul, I think you remember that 3 years ago, the audit committee received a report with 3 options, and the audit committee actually approved the process for going to PSA, and that report also went to full council for adoption.
Thank you. I think Councillor Lava raised a good point, and I'm glad that we've bottomed it out. I saw Councillor Logan, I think, and I've got Malik and McAllister afterwards.
Just a quick question on what we should expect. You've referred a couple of times to the value for money judgment, which is outstanding. It's notable that a couple of the comments that you're looking at are things that you looked at the year before. So I just wanted to ask, not in terms of to prejudge what you're going to tell us, but in terms of the category of things to expect, will you be making a judgment on the adequacy of the management actions that are being taken in those areas, and potentially a recommendation to do anything different?
Yes, so our report will cover both commentary on arrangements that we have identified, both in the current year, and arrangements that we may have identified previously, any recommendations that we made previously, and how and whether they have been addressed either partially or in full, a little bit like the elements of the audit findings report do. Our previous auditor's annual report was presented to this committee, I think off the top of my head it was around the June of 2023, so an example report will be in public papers that you could have a look at. It will give you an indication of how we report, but it's a combination of both in-year findings with recommendations made where appropriate at a number of levels. Improvement recommendations are sort of business as usual or business improvements. Then we've got the next stage up will be a key recommendation, which would always be connected to a significant weakness. And then the final level of recommendation we can make is a statutory recommendation, which we've not had to do at this council previously. So each of those will be, any relevant recommendations will be noted in the report alongside commentary to develop any findings from previous period and update members on where the council has got to with those.
Councillor Malik, please.
I'm not sure, I might be missing it, but when is this report due to be published? Is it going to be in synchronisation with our accounts?
So this report is, as present, published publicly, but it will be finalised in time for the November committee papers, and we should be able to bring a final version of it then. There will then be a very small number of tweaks that we will do to change the outstanding items on the first few pages of the report, and we will provide a fully final version of this report to management when we provide the signed audit opinion. That report can then be circulated, but we expect the November version of this report that we bring to only say that we need to review the final set of approved financial statements that comes as a result of hopefully your approval of those accounts of that committee.
So just to follow up then, in terms of the assessments, the TBC assessments, when are they due to be updated, because critical stuff in there?
They should all be updated in the November version of the report. They will TBC as a number of those areas at the time of drafting the report were incomplete. As we've noted, a few of those areas have now been closed, and we can report that there are no material errors within the accounts, and those numbers are materially accurate, but yes, updated version in November.
Thank you.
Councillor McAllister is the last speaker that I've got on my list.
Thank you, Chair. On the contents page for the appendices, we've got A through I listed, but in the actual documents on the front page of your report, we've only got appendices A through F, so we're missing GH and I. I was just wondering if this was a misnumbering or if we're missing some slides.
Apologies, Councillor, that's those items will be included in the final version of the report that we bring to November. So that was a miss by us in terms of removing them from this version, but they will be included in the final version in November.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, we've had plenty of questions. It seems to me that they have been answered to the committee's satisfaction. If anyone would like to raise something for the action log, then please say so. Otherwise, we are then at the recommendation. I'm not hearing any comments on the draft statement of accounts, so sorry, on the draft audit. So then we're at noting it. Yeah, who would like to move that we note? Okay, I have Councillor Hucker moving, and I think McAllister seconding. And the Grant Thornton audit report there has noted. So the next item was the last one on the agenda that's been brought forward. So was item 19. This is the Bristol City Council Trading Company's annual comprehensive assurance statements, and we are moving that forward in the agenda so that our guests from said trading companies can respond to any questions that we have now, and then depart back to their very busy waste collection jobs soon afterwards. Who would like to lead this item?
Yeah. Right, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, all. So my name is Chris Smith. I'm the Executive Lead for Bristol Holding. I assume you've read the report, Bristol Holding report, in the pack, and that, but I'd just like to say a few words about the role of Bristol Holding. I think it's just important to understand the context. So Bristol Holding is a very lean organisation. Essentially, it consists of myself plus a part-time chair, Alex Wiseman. Now, Bristol's primary role is one of governance and assurance. So what do? We attend all of the company board meetings, we attend all of the audit and risk committee meetings, known as the ARACs, and in our opinion, the governance and the assurance framework has been strengthened in the last year. The direction of travel has certainly been very positive. And the ARACs have made a very strong contribution to that improved position. They've been in place now for some 18 months, and they've made a strong start in their journey towards maturity. What have they been doing? You'll hear more later from the teams, from the companies, but the ARACs essentially have been putting in place risk assurance frameworks, policies and procedures, and putting those in place. Now, you may recall that in Bristol Waste, over 18 months ago, 18 to 24 months ago, there were a number of whistleblowing incidents. They have been dealt with, and as a result of those incidents, lessons were learnt. So what do we mean by that? We'll put in strong processes, financial policies. There was a right to speak up policy introduced within the organisation, and there was a significant cultural change. So that's effectively been a positive. But of course, what I'd like to say is we can't be complacent at all. So our approach in risk and assurance is really around levels of defence and different levels. And what are they? They're effectively Bristol Holding being embedded in the process. They are the company audit risk committees, the ARACs that I mentioned. There's internal audit, of course, as well, that plays a strong part of that, in that. And there are also the external bodies that, from time to time, carry out reviews. So, for example, the environmental agencies, health and safety agency and the like, so they keep constant watch on this sort of framework from those individuals' perspectives. But the other important area, of course, is external audit. So our external auditors are PwC. They've given this year another clean, unqualified opinion on all the sets of financial statements. I know the question was raised earlier around the financial statements that have been completed and they will be filed at Companies House very shortly. What I would say is, again, unqualified, no material changes in terms of the financial statements, which is all very positive. I'd also say as well, in terms of external auditors, that we are carrying out a value for money exercise for the companies. So that process is now being undertaken. We do that every 3 years, and now is the time to look at that in terms of the context of value for money. So I just wanted to make all of you aware of that. So I'm not going to say any more apart from opening up to any questions. If there's any questions about Bristol Holding, in terms of the individual companies, the individual teams will take you through their area and take questions on their individual companies. But is there anything around Bristol Holding that anybody's got any question on, or any detail in the paper that was submitted?
Okay, so that's the presentation from Holdings. We'll get to Goram and Waste after we've done. So any questions from councillors? I see Councillor Malik.
Thank you. And I referred to page 53 and within that 4.6 where it touches on one of my question, the council's transition to the committee system and how it's had no direct impact on the way companies kind of function and audit. But my question is, how has the shift from the mayoral system to maybe the committee-led approach affected the structure and governance? Has it been something that's been noted positively, or has there been obstacles that you could kind of share with us?
No, that's a very good question. And in terms of the move to the committee approach, I think that's been handled really well, and it's gone very, very smoothly. Of course, we have had continuity through a number of councillors, Councillor Dyer in particular, that's been a very sort of positive force around that transfer. And I have to say, it's all been, in my view, positive, and has been relatively seamless. So, from Bristol Holding and Company's perspective, it's gone very smoothly. Of course, with any change, you've got reorientation of the way you work. I think that the essentials, the core bits though, like business planning, strategy, they've not been affected at this stage. So it's been very positive.
Okay, can I just have a follow-up, please, on the financial oversight and the accountability then? In light of the financial decisions that were made maybe previously, what steps are being taken to ensure the rigorous financial oversight of the trading companies?
Could you repeat that, please? The risk?
So I just want to know what the financial accountability is and the steps that are being taken to kind of make sure that there is vigorous financial oversight.
Yeah, I think I mentioned, of course, around in terms of the audit and risk committees within the companies. So they play a very big part in terms of the governance framework. They, of course, report through to their boards. The role of Holding is working very closely with the shareholder liaison team and the individual officers here to ensure that effectively things are elevated risks or elevated where necessary. In, for example, the shareholder meeting. There's a shareholder meeting every quarter. So that's when things like risk frameworks are assessed. That's when any matters that need to be brought to the attention of the council are then fed through at that stage. So there are absolutely activities in place and functions in place to deal with that.
Thank you.
I'd like to expand myself on that governance theme, if I may, and perhaps you could aid my understanding of the role of the holding company to act as an intermediary, perhaps, between the City Council and the council-owned companies, but they operate independently. So there's a certain level of accountability in terms of the contract. The council gets a contract, the company bids for it, and so you've got that relationship. Is there also a relationship in terms of, well, this is a council-owned company, and so if there are problems with performance with the company, as well as just going every annual or whatever tender negotiations, there's another conduit through. Could you explain how that works?
Sure.
How I suppose you talked about how a company can escalate their issues to the council representative. How can it be done the other way?
So this is, so there is actually a strategic team within the council. So if you take Bristol Waste as an example, so there is a strategic team that's effectively part of John Smith's portfolio that actually liaise regularly with Bristol Waste. They have diarised meetings, and they'll go through, for example, contractual issues between the two parties. They'll go around, they'll go to performance. So you get a more direct approach then, feedback around operational matters, contractual matters, and that flow of information can then effectively take place. It can go back towards the officers. So that works very well.
Do any councillors have any further comments to Bristol Holdings? In which case, I will invite a representative from Gorham Homes, please, to present.
Thank you. I'm Andrew Martin-Johns. I'm Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee for Gorham Homes, and I've been in that role now for 18 months. Just a bit of background to me, because I suspect you may not have met me before. I'm a chartered accountant. I've lived in the Bristol area for over, just under 50 years. So I'm really proud to be part of Gorham Homes, and as it continues to build more social housing, more housing for Bristol. Since retiring from Deloitte, I've been a non-executive board member for 2 housing associations. I'm also on the Shelter Audit Committee in London, and another role I have in social housing is I'm chair of Community Housing Cymru, which is the Welsh equivalent to the National Housing Federation. I'm here to just talk to you through our audit report, just to highlight the key items. So the committee comprises 3 independent members, including myself as chair, and we operate under the provisions of the UK Code of Governance. We meet 5 times a year, and those meetings are aligned to the board meetings of Gorham Homes. It's worth noting that during the year, Councillor Don Alexander has resigned during that period, and Councillor David Wilcox has been appointed to the committee. The purpose of the audit committee is really to act independently from the company and provide key assurance both to the Gorham Homes board and to the shareholder Bristol City Council. We review and monitor the financial information provided to the board. We look at the company's systems for internal controls and risk management, the internal and external audit processes, and also the performance of the auditors, and also Gorham Homes' compliance with laws, regulations, ethical codes of practice. Key priority of the committee is to regularly review the adequacy and implementation of Gorham Homes' risk management strategy and framework. This supports the delivery of the business plan, providing assurance to the board and the shareholder. Gorham Homes developed their risk register during 2023 and embedded the identification and reporting of risks, and that means both opportunities and threats, within the regular company board reporting through 2023-2024. The risk management process was also subject to an internal audit assessment during the year, and we obtained reasonable assurance for that review. On health and safety arrangements, the committee obtains assurance that our partners are managing health and safety adequately, and they're following construction, design and management regulations. We receive this assurance from our own independent professional advisors who review their practices, the partners' practices, as well as looking at the LLP's own in-house health and safety reports. The Audit Committee has also reviewed information, governance and cyber security during the year, and no significant concerns were identified. The external audit of the statutory accounts has now been completed, and a clean audit opinion given. 3 internal audits were undertaken during the year, and they also received reasonable assurance. Just finally, the Gorham Homes Audit and Risk Committee is an essential tool for strong governance and ensuring the company is operating in an effective control environment, and I believe that that is what we have achieved really during the year. I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I'll open up to councillors.
I think it's the obvious question that Gorham Homes need accountability to the general public. How is Gorham Homes held accountable to the community they serve, particularly in areas like housing and development, which were significantly, which need significant improvement?
Yeah. You'd have to just explain the process.
I'll take that one. Stephen Baker, Managing Director of Gorham Homes. So I think your question was how are we held accountable to the public for what we do. Actually, by being a local authority-owned company, we are held to account regularly by the fact that we have membership of our board, by councillors and your representatives of the city. So you're shaping every time that we meet what we're doing and holding us to account, as well as the meetings of the Audit and Risk Committee. Again, we have councillor representatives on those boards talking to us about what's happening in the city as a whole and holding us to account. Operationally, we have the planning system, again, which is a public body that holds us to account on the standards in which we build. So you've got layers of control in a way that I think is exceptionally robust for you as a city, that you have representatives of the city within the company itself holding us to account, ensuring what we're delivering. And then as a council yourself, as has been highlighted earlier through the Bristol holding work that flows up to the shareholder, you again as the council are the shareholder and you hold us to account, shape our business plan on an annual basis and ask us to undertake the work that you would like us to do in the year. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of, but I suppose it's about the evaluations and transparency for the public, and obviously that burden is upon us as well, I suppose.
I'm happy to develop that theme, actually, as I asked a little about governance of the holdings company. So the section of the report for financial statements and performance management doesn't actually discuss performance management as far as I can tell. So it's the chief executive said the business plan is developed in consultation with the city council. So how can we as a committee be assured that that business plan has been delivered? I'm sure it's not as crude as the number of homes per year, but I don't actually see anything like that on this risk report. So can you tell us a little bit more about monitoring performance and accountability for that, please?
So the way that the performance management structure works is that on an annual basis the council sets out the objectives that it wishes the company to follow in shaping its business plan. As part of that business planning process, we'll then agree with the council a set of key performance indicators that are reported as we go through the year to the shareholder meetings who will consider the performance of the company. That's alongside the additional meetings that we have with the growth and regen teams who act as a client function, delving into the work that we're doing to ensure that the outcomes are what the council want for the year.
Thank you. And does the risk and audit committees consider that as sort of as an equivalent to the council's value for money piece? Are those KPIs being hit?
Yes, so as part of our audit committee, each audit committee we actually review the latest reports and the latest KPIs from the company. In terms of whether those KPIs are being hit, we basically identify the risks and how they have developed, I suppose, during that period. So in terms of the business plan for the year, I suppose the key risk really, one is our inability I suppose, to hit our milestones in the business plan. And I suppose the key one is actually delivering of numbers of homes. We are currently behind, but we won't quite catch up this year. but we have plans in place to catch up the following year. So we do monitor that pretty carefully and report it back to the board where we are going to have concerns.
That's good to hear. Now, I'm not a finance professional, so do you think it would be appropriate to report that sort of monitoring in the annual report that comes to this committee?
I think it's probably more for the board, I suppose, to report that to the shareholder. We are, I suppose, are reporting that we are aware of the risk, we are happy that it is being controlled appropriately and that actions are being taken to rectify any issues which cause that falling behind the milestones.
Can you just tell me where that is reported? Or when you say we are reporting, that's
well,
in general rather than in this?
Yes, we report it to board, basically. It's reflected in the minutes of our committee, which also our board see.
Thank you. I see the leader of the council.
Thank you, Chair. I think just one other thing to add that is the responsibility of the shareholder group to monitor the meeting of KPIs and other targets within the business planning throughout the year. That also gets reported back to the relevant policy and committee chair. So homes and delivery will get information in regards to the number of homes that are being delivered. So I think the point I'm making is that as the business plan is being delivered, there is monitoring that goes on both within strategy and resources and within the housing and the homes policy committees to ensure that business plan is kept on track. And then the shareholder group, of which I'm a member, along with the Vice Chair of Strategy and Resources, have more in-depth conversations with Gorham Homes, Bristol Waste and so on, in terms of their delivery. In terms of Bristol Waste, rather than the homes and housing being a committee, it's the environmental and sustainability, and they're also responsible for the waste contract or setting the waste standards. And then Bristol Waste and hormones within their business planning process are also monitored as we go through the process, and then the final business plans are approved for recommendation to full council approval by strategy and resources.
Thank you, Councillor Dyer. Does the committee have any further observations? Councillor Malik.
Sorry, so just to clarify, in terms of the environmental impact, where would the audit for the environmental impact be?
The environmental impact of the company?
Of the company, and also about building homes and the impact that that's having, or what type of homes we're building.
Yeah, so on an annual basis, so that the council and the public can see what we've been doing in the year, we generate an annual report. So our annual reports usually published imminently, and in that it will set out performance within the year, and that will be showing our environmental standards and what we've been doing within the year. So we use that mechanism as a reporting mechanism so that you can see, but we do have KPIs that are reported regarding our environmental standards in the way that we've just been discussing as well.
We're straying a little from audit, so I'll just check if there are any more comments on assurance. So I would just leave my comment on the report. There is a section called performance management, and it doesn't talk about how performance management is audited, but you have given the assurance at this meeting that that is happening. Thank you for that. So I'll then invite the Bristol Waste to give their report, please.
I suppose I'm forewarned regarding some of the questions you might pop in my direction later on, so perhaps I'll try and cover those off. I'm Robin Pritchard, I'm the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee at Bristol Waste. I've been in post just a little over 12 months. This was my first meeting last year when I joined. So 12 months later, I'm pleased to be able to deliver a report that actually knows something about. On my left is Philip Bruxton, who's joined as the FD of the company in the last 8 weeks.
and I suppose it's part of the transformation process that's gone on that Chris referred to earlier on when he was talking about Bristol Holdings and governance. So, following on my colleague at Gorham Homes, I'm also a past partner of a number of chartered accounting firms within the UK. I'm currently also the independent chair of Midland Metro, and have recently retired from a position as an independent member of the West London Waste Authority. So what I'm trying to bring to the party here is, I suppose, similarly, strong governance, input regarding financial management, sound financial management, and hopefully good practice at the Audit and Risk Committee. So I was proposing to take as read the paper that you've got in front of you and just give you a couple of comments regarding some of the more significant matters that have happened during the last 12 months. So I'm very conscious that time moves on and this report is 6 months old now. We are a commercial business looking for the future and hopefully not looking too far into what's gone on in the past. I think the major highlight of the year, following the trend that has been talked about already with the other organisations, is some of the decisions we made early on in Andy Pollard as chairman of my tenure, in that we decided that the board should deal with some of the more significant matters, particularly around financial management. So the board sees robust financial management figures on a month-by-month basis, along with very, very detailed KPI targets, which deal not only with the operational side of the business, but also the financial matters and the delivery and sustainability issues. From the Audit Committee perspective, we've certainly focused upon risk management, governance and control, and built a strong process of review of our performance throughout the last 12 months. And significantly, that has focused upon re-establishing a robust risk management process within the business. And we've restructured the risk management strategy to define specifically what is significant to the delivery of our business plan. And that has meant that on a month basis, we do see those matters which are above the risk appetite of the board, so that the board can deal with them as they are occurring, rather than even to the Audit and Risk Committee. The benefit, I think, that has then given the organisation is that it has allowed the internal audit team to develop a much closer relationship. Our internal audit is, as I said earlier, provided by Bristol City Council. So the internal audit team are now able to focus on all the matters which we and they believe are significant to the operation of our business. So the recommendations that we get in the form of brand ratings do focus on risks that are significant to our delivery of services, and also the priority to which those risks should be reacted to. And that fits neatly in line with the operation of our business at the front end. In turn, that should lead, I think, to the annual Head of Internal Audits report supporting this statement in future years as they comply with the governance arrangements within the global internal audit standards and provide us with an annual assurance opinion. I think also worth probably mentioning is that we asked the internal audit team as the first audit in this year to help us with our 3 lines of defence theory, which we have put in place. And Silver and his team have helped us to identify the second and third lines of defence that provide us with assurance that things are as they should be. And that will in turn allow better internal audit planning and better able then to focus our internal audit plans to help us to develop together the business of the future. I wasn't proposing to say anything else, Chair, at this stage, but we'd be delighted to answer any questions anybody has.
Thank you. Michelle, I do pass to the committee for their observations about risk management of this company.
Sorry, I suppose I'm just going to ask the obvious one again, and it's really the report on page 543 maybe of our report that we have. 1.5 says the main aims of the holding companies, and obviously Bristol Waste is included in that, and part of it is the delivery, so to ensure that the strategic developments of the council are met. And I suppose one of the strategic objectives would be to have a cleaner and greener council, and through the services that we deliver in the areas that we live in. And how is this kind of strategic you know, kind of vision, a priority for Bristol Waste as a company, and where is that highlighted in terms of priority?
Councillor Malik, we're talking about page 543. Is that in relation to Bristol Holdings? I'm sure you'll find out rephrasing the question to make it directed to Bristol Waste. But perhaps that's worth considering. I'll pass to Councillor Logan next, and perhaps you'll reword that. That's it.
Yeah, I want to ask about the impact of internal audit within the Bristol Waste. So you refer in your report to things that internal audits that have identified, primarily procurement and overtime, but it just mentions procurement and overtime. It doesn't say what those issues were or how serious they were or what you've learned from them. There is a reference to an Appendix A, but it just refers to some sickness within the internal audit team. It doesn't tell us what they found in those meetings. So I guess my question from an assurance point of view is, do you see that? And do you see impacts having been taken by Bristol Waste Management in those areas?
Yes, and the Audit Committee receives the full internal audit report. The two reports that are referred to here were regarding procurement and overtime costs, and both of which are being followed up in the current year, following significant management attention to both areas in terms of developing a new procurement policy and looking at our ability to deliver services but use the use of overtime and agency staff in the best way possible to be both efficient and low cost. So we get full transparency regarding what internal audit is saying, both at the management level and at the board level. But all of that, as I tried to say earlier on, is built within this risk management framework, so that where internal audit think we've identified areas that are significant to our business, they are escalated through the governance process so they're dealt with at the appropriate level and in a timely manner.
So you would anticipate those issues to have been resolved by the next time this is reported?
Absolutely. And being resolved as we speak.
Okay, thank you.
Just on procurement, while we mentioned it, I'm sure Bristol Waste were aware of the question from a member of the public that was presented to the Audit Committee related to the procurement of services at Bristol Waste. So we can bear that one in mind, going back to work, have a look in the papers, and we'll be able to see what was brought up in writing by a member of the public in attendance. Now, I'll go to Mr. Adair and then Councillor Malik.
Thank you very much. Very quick observation, more so for Simba and his team. There seems to be representation of internal audit on the Gorham Homes Committee, but there seems to be none for Bristol Waste. Just to understand why you made that decision, or am I correct or not? If you look at the listing of committee attendees, why have you picked one over the other? That's the question.
So, we provide general audit services for all the council companies. I'm the Chief Engineer Auditor for Bristol City Council to make sure that we manage potential conflicts, because I work for both the shareholder and by providing general audit service to the companies, I'm also providing services to the client. So to make sure that we manage that conflict, I predominantly only attend or engage with the companies when there are strategic decisions or strategic conversations. That's the reason why I'm not there.
No, maybe you didn't get my question. You are listed for Gorham, and when you don't attend, Alison does. But there's no, you do not attend at all for Bristol Waste.
No, the arrangements are the same.
Okay.
I only attend when I need to attend, but Alison is my deputy, is the substantive lead for companies. But the arrangements are the same. So they've also been listed on all the companies and their new return as well. But I attend, I put an open at the committee, so I will attend a lead too. But Alison is the main lead, and she makes decisions just to manage that potential. I will attend a lead too.
So if I may develop Mr. Alabao's point, there's a table shown on page 554. Is that what you're referencing?
Yeah.
And so that table shows the attendees of the risk committee, and you're not listed.
Okay. To answer this, internal audit attend all audit committees for all the companies, but I think what Bristol West did, they only put in the attendance for the audit committee members only. They haven't listed the officers and internal audit. They are only reporting just the audit committee members only. But internal audit attend all the meetings for all the other meetings.
Some paragraphs below, you'll see reference to internal and external audit representatives attending meetings as appropriate. And it's probably worth adding that there is a good relationship with not only Alison as the main representative, Simba and I also have meetings along with management outside of those meetings as appropriate to make sure that the relationship is constructive.
I'll pass to Councillor Malik now.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that previous blunder, Chair, but obviously quoting those paragraphs from the holdings company is quite relevant to the report, page 552, 557, if I'm correct this time. But also, if you, on 554, if you look at the work of the audit committee and the scope, it talks about most of the things except for environmental impact. So I'm just wondering where that is and how we measure environmental impact and how that's audited. That was a question.
Environmental impact is as with Gordon Homes, one of our key performance indicators, and that is measured at board level rather than at the ARAC level. So it goes through the governance reporting arrangements that you've already heard about with the stakeholder group.
One more for me, and that looks like it might finish it off, and it's the same sort of question about performance accountability, and there is very helpfully a description on page 555 about key issues of performance that have been escalated to the risk committees. Thank you for presenting that. And can I just check what's the conduit for issues to be escalated from one party to another, from the council to the company, and vice versa in terms of performance?
I think Chris has already mentioned the routine meetings that take place between Dave Grant as our managing director and members of the management team and their colleagues within the Bristol City Council. And I'm sure from Bristol Waste point of view, we would want to say how much better those relationships seem to have grown over the last 12 months. And perhaps I should say that Dave Knight is the current MD at Bristol Waste. He leaves us in 3 weeks' time after putting 18 months into the business. And I think he has led a tremendous campaign of transformation, which has seen the business transform from one of loss-making to one which we hope will be profitable in the near future.
Thank you. I don't see anything else from the councillors, and so we are invited at the end of that to know the report. And is that Councillor Burton's proposing that we are noting? And the second is coming from Councillor Levan. Thank you very much. I take that as noted. So, you're probably excited to know what's coming next. It is item 16, Code of Corporate Governance. That's what you were expecting. We've been going an hour and a half. I think we're halfway through the agenda. Is the committee happy to continue, or would a 5-minute comfort break be helpful? Yeah, if that happens, then definitely. All right, then, let's power on. Thank you to our guests. Then the Code of Corporate Governance is to be presented by Ms. Robertson will introduce the item to us.
actually, Chair, it's my colleague, Ms Jones, who's going to be dealing with the report today.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm presenting this report on the Code of Corporate Governance on behalf of the Director of Legal and Democratic Services. The report is seeking the committee's approval today as it's been updated. The last version of the report the Audit Committee saw was in March 2021. We've reviewed it fully and addressed all the various ways that the Council ensures that it supports good governance, all the systems and processes. So you'll see in the Appendix A sections that have been updated. What we're asking today is for you to review and, if agreed, to approve the report. And we're also recommending that it's taken to full Council tonight. So if you've got any questions, Nancy and I are here to take those.
Open that up to councillors who are probably still scrolling through a 500-page document to find it.
Just to confirm, Chair, that the main reason is to make sure that it's been updated to reflect the changed arrangements. So that was a necessary thing we had to do, but we also took the opportunity to simplify and update it generally.
And are there any particular sections that you wish to highlight? So I notice we don't have a track change version or similar.
No, I think in terms of simplifying it, there were a lot of pictures in the last version, so this is kind of, so it was quite difficult to track change it in terms of removing those. But I think the majority of the sections are the same. What we've done is included updated strategies, but things like the Constitution, the Code of Conduct for employees, members, they've all naturally been updated over time, so they're still referenced in the same way.
Okay.
I think the obvious kind of observation was that we don't have anything to compare to. I think that's kind of been addressed. So most of what I was thinking seems to be in the report and has been addressed, but it would be good to have had the previous version all highlighted what we've added or taken out from the previous version.
If it's helpful, I can circulate the old version. Obviously, that's still on our Constitution site because that's the current version separately, and then you'll be able to see. I think it's difficult because there were a lot of diagrams and things. So, by the fact that we took those out, the track changes are very difficult to see on those versions. So I can share that separately if helpful.
Councillor McAllister.
Thank you. Thanks very much for this report. I just want to note, really, given the public forum contributions we heard earlier, that we've still got, we as a council, as an organisation, have still got work to do in these areas. I think it's important to note that in the eyes of the public, we're by no means perfect, as we are all accountable at the end of the day to the public. But thank you very much for this report. I think it will hopefully be helpful in addressing that situation.
This is an approved item. I trust members believe that we've got enough information in order to approve it. We don't have to wait for a copyright version. So that may delay going to full council next week. So is anyone willing to move that the code is approved? Councillor Mallon is, and I see Councillor Hucker to second there. And if we have no speakers, then shall I confirm approved? Go ahead. So it's going to full council having us. We have indeed approved it, and it will go to full council for them to note what it says in the papers. Excellent. So the next item would be originally item 13, which is internal audit exemptions report, which is one of our larger ones, to look at in particular the 4 limited assurance recommendations that our internal audit team has recommended to us.
Thank you, Chair. I won't waste time. I only want to confirm that these limited assurance reports relate to the 2023-24 financial year. So this relates to the previous year. So I'm going to ask Alison to introduce the business continuity as appendix 1, and then if you will take the rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Simba. Yeah, so the business continuity audit included limited assurance. Bristol City Council has a business continuity response framework which sets out the approach to business continuity that the council it expects to take. The framework requires every service manager to prepare a business continuity plan for relevant continuity risks in their areas. And this audit looked in the main at whether that process was happening across the council and concluded that actually the arrangements needed improvement. Focus had been on business impact assessment as the first stage is business continuity planning, and there were issues around quality in a number of those. And then our annual governance statement process asks managers to confirm that those arrangements were in place and effective, and drawing on assurances that we've received from there. The performance had decreased, and a lot of managers had said that they have not got effective arrangements in place in that respect. And when we sample tested to see whether the plans that are in place were tested regularly, a significant number of them haven't been recently tested. So those were the key findings from that audit report. There are a couple of others around not having a corporate policy, and the requirement to liaise and support local businesses being more demand-led rather than proactive, which are some of the other issues we picked up. The report was well received by management, and I'll hand over to Emma Howard, who will give you an update on progress to remedy these issues.
Thank you. The business continuity has made significant improvement over the last 10 months, to the point where the 11 management actions are now down to 2, and 1 will be agreed by CLB this week. The improvement in organisational maturity around business continuity has been facilitated by a performance and dashboard approach which has been well received by management and EDMs, and is really facilitating the understanding and improvement need throughout all services. So the actions are going well, and we do envisage that they will all be delivered within timescales and will continue to improve across the organisation around business continuity.
Thank you. Do councillors have any questions or comments on the management response there on the original audit? So that 9.5 out of 11 is pretty good. Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you, Chair. I'm interested to note that there doesn't seem to be any reference to the Somerset Local Resilience Forum in continuity planning. Is that an expected omission?
The aim of the Somerset Local Resilience Forum is part of the emergency planning plan, which is very separate to business continuity. It just forms part of an emergency planning review which is commencing soon.
But aren't the two things connected in terms of providing continuity of service for our saints in the case of an actual emergency?
Absolutely, but that forms part of the LRF plan, and not sort of, if you like, our internal. This is about our internal services.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lavan?
I had a query about the significant portion, page 310, significant portion of Section 106 funds held.
Yes. Hold that question question, we're very close. Well, I don't know how close we are. Ms. Cudworth, would you like us to move on from this item?
Field, please.
Okay, the next report to introduce is the audit summary on the housing investment programme, maintaining homes. That's Appendix 2. I've noted it says draft on it, is actually final. The objective of this review was to review and assess the delivery of the planned maintenance programme, looking specifically at key projects and best value monitoring. We found quite a number of strengths during our review, particularly around the documentation and the record keeping and procurement processes. However, overall, we found that the budgets for the projects in progress were overspent. That's for at the start of 23-24, but also that delivery was behind schedule also. Our other main conclusion was that the monitoring processes in place did not necessarily well highlight the key issues and trends coming out of the progress with the projects. So we reported through to the Housing and Landlord Services team, who were responsive and receptive to the findings, and representatives are present to respond.
Hello everybody, my name is Craig Cook, I'm Head of Repairs and Maintenance in this area. I'm not quite as good as Emma's performance, unfortunately, completing off 9 of the 11, so we've had 6 management actions in this space. We've completed 3. The remaining 3 are underway on different percentages of being completed. Of the 3 remaining, contract management practices is already improved. However, to support the team, we're looking to increase additional resources to give a focused approach, and we've also engaged with the centralised contract management team. We're also looking to increase the reporting, which is underway and developing to improve the oversight in this space. So things are absolutely happening. There's good work in this place, and we welcome the findings from audit to help us improve.
Thank you. We've certainly heard about capital projects that are a little over budget and overrunning and difficult to track before. I wonder if the councillors have any observations. Councillor Lagan and then Wilcox.
Sorry, I wasn't clear. Right. I'm with you now. On the high-rise impact on the overspend on the high-rise project, the impact here was basically saying that we did less work than we expected to, but we spent more than we planned to on the projects that we did. So there's obviously some messages to be learned there. And the bullet points of the management response, all those things are useful, but I'm worried they aren't sufficient in terms of how confident are you that you are costing appropriately at the beginning? Because this arises from surveying practice as much as procurement practice. It's important to have the accurate assessment at the beginning, but also that you hold the suppliers to that. Are you confident that that's happening?
I'm confident that we've improved that process massively. I came into post 2 years ago, and we've reshaped the way that we take a strategic approach to asset investment, so we can look forward. Now we've created an improvement board, or a capital investment board, but not governed as UT capital investment board, formally, just to create a space for officers to look strategically, horizon scan what works are coming, to be able to procure and scope the work properly. We're also developing that scope to be a lot more data-led, which feeds into the Housing Consumer Standards programme work that we're looking at. And there's also a note to say around an acceptance of projects overrunning. That's a slight misinterpretation of the officer in question who was interviewed. It's an absolutely conscientious service is aware of it. What that was alluding to is defects in projects, unknowns in construction, need to be fought by differently. So we've also reflected and changed the way that we think about contingencies on contracts such as this construction project. So in the future housing investment plan, there will be contingencies based on imperial experience and evidence from projects. Am I confident in it? I'm confident that we've improved massively and we understand a lot more. I'm confident that we've improved processes to collate the correct data to inform that estimation of figures much better.
Okay. So in terms of, just briefly back, that's really positive, thank you. And I can see that impact is happening, it's just how to see it happen. My question is a question of the balance of skills and training, because the things you need to be a fantastic surveyor are always the same things to be a fantastic contract manager. So have we provided commercial training to surveyors, or have we provided dedicated commercial managers to lead the relationships with the suppliers?
Yes and yes. Can we do more? Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, if I could take a moment. Sorry, I've lined up. Councillor Wilcox first, then I'll.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to delve in on a couple of the anomalies that internal audit spotted. I'm quite interested in why a kitchen costs £1,000 more in Bristol North, or North Bristol than in Bristol South. Because assuming you were installing the same components across the city, is that purely an increase in labour charge that is factored in there? Can we have some more details on that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. The kitchen contract splits across north and south on the framework. Two key reasons, effectively. Condition of properties dependent on area, but more so contract management capability within the service and consistency of. So as the management responses, there's a lessons learned activity underway, training provided to surveyors and contract managers in how to manage and oversee contractors in this space.
So, was anybody monitoring this process happening and spotting that the kitchens were costing more in North Bristol?
They were monitoring it, but clearly not to the level that was required. So there's been some training provided to the team manager around how we can improve that. But speaking to Councillor Logan's point, it's around some centralised contract management support, so we can create a more professional service from learning from that corporate home with that skill set.
That's gratifying to hear, and let's hope that changes and we start using people in South Bristol to install kitchens in North
I just want to point out one thing, Councillor Wilcox, as a North Bristol resident and councillor, I think you've misread it, and that actually the South was being overcharged. And this, for the first time ever, the North Bristol premium wasn't applied.
Thank you for spotting that discrepancy. The other question I have is about the Gilton House project. How big was that project in terms of monetary value?
I'd have to look at the report and go back to exactly which one we're talking. If it's the major refurbishment and replacement of the cladding scheme, it started off on a different scope to the one that was finally delivered because of the cladding remediation that came to light following the two fires. So the council took a different approach to the cladding risk on buildings halfway through Gilton House, so the scope changed, so the cost increased.
Was there a risk report created initially for the initial project?
I'll have to go back and find the information.
Because that really is basic project management, to include a risk report on any project of that nature, particularly if it's multi-million pounds, which I think even the original scope for repairing Gilton House would have been. That is a major oversight in terms of how the council delivers stuff.
I appreciate the sentiment, Councillor Wilcox. I wonder if the detailed management is best left to the Housing Committee. We're obviously happy that this has been spotted as part of an audit process, and I suspect are interested in further processes to improve. So I wonder if you could frame any future observations in that direction. You said you had a list.
I'm happy to do that, yeah.
Any more on this you like? In which case, I think My question would be around our corporate response to capital investment. We heard at our last committee meeting the lessons learned from the Bristol Beacon project, which I'm sure is of a different magnitude, but nonetheless probably transferable. And we heard about probably not called it a centre of excellence for capital projects, but there was something like that being rolled out. I wonder if any of our managers could comment on our general approach to capital programmes and how that could improve performance in the housing programme particularly.
Good afternoon, my name's Alex Hearn, I'm the Director of Economy of Place. So I'm not responsible for housing, but I would comment that I'm part of an officer board which has been established both to significantly improve and transform our approach to capital programme and project management, and meets regularly to oversee the programme and also absorbs information not just from internal lessons learned, but engages regularly with partners such as the Mayoral Combined Authority, where we're delivering projects that they're funding and their improvement programmes. So it's something we take very seriously.
Thank you, Chair. I think my general observation would be is we recognise that there is and has been for some time a serious problem within this area. As has been mentioned, steps are being taken to address this problem. I have previously stated that we'll be prioritising the repairs that are required to do, particularly those that concern the ability for our tenants to feel safe in their homes. What I will also say is it's not going to happen overnight. We do need to review some of the programmes that we currently have in place, particularly in relation to HRA delivery, but also capital projects in place. I would say that the current capital budget, as it was originally set, was very ambitious and perhaps overestimated the ability to deliver on some of those capital projects. That is now being revised. That information will be coming to strategy and resources and to future committees to look at how we address the problems in the future that Audit are now looking at for the past.
Thank you. It's important to recognise the role of the client in project management, and that's the key point you raised. Now, I think we're then done on housing investments, so we move on to section 106, and I do have Councillor Levan first on the list, just as soon as we've heard the report.
Okay, so the next exception report is Appendix 3, Section 106, Community Infrastructure Levy. We looked at the management of the expenditure of the monies secured via these means. As is often the case, we did manage to identify a number of strengths in the management. So the funds were being properly collected, they were being maintained and administrated well. The spending was being properly disclosed and published on the website. We did, however, also find some issues. So particularly we found that there were some delays in spending the funds promptly. Excuse me. That was both in terms of drawing down of the funds by the service departments who actually incurred the expenditure, but also, secondly, once the departments had drawn down the funds, there were further delays in actually applying them to specific schemes, and that largely related to delays in the particular programmes where the money was going to be allocated. Finally, we found that there wasn't actually a mechanism in place for the departments to report back that the funds had been properly applied for the purposes for which they'd been drawn down. So we reported through, we asked for a corporate response from the Directorate because the issue was across a number of services, and we managed to secure that corporate response and indeed a positive response from the Directorate. Colleagues are present to respond to the report.
So, hopefully I don't need to introduce myself again. I appreciate I don't have a name tag. Alex, well, I'll do it anyway. Alex, Director for Economy of Place. So, both planning and transport are in my division of growth and regeneration, and I mean, I think the bullet points in the management response speak for themselves, but I'd summarise it as saying this is a service that went through a very, very difficult period in relation to a loss of capacity that is now being restructured and is being fundamentally rebuilt, particularly around its ability to deliver capital projects and not just some of the quite significant ones that are funded by, for example, funds from the Combined Authority, but projects which can be supported through the Area Committees mechanism, Section 106 sums. I'm not just in terms of capacity within the team itself from a delivery perspective, but also because of the sheer scale of the Transport Capital Programme, there is a quite a significant apparatus around project management office, financial reporting, scheduling, programming, which has seen quite significant learning and development there, including with our Combined Authority teams to share good practice. But I do think that it's worth noting that we're able to report that quite a significant amount has been now identified as match, and that we now have mechanisms in place to be able to provide the reporting back to the planning obligations team. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Councillor Levan.
Thank you, Chair. I noted that in a significant portion of the Section 106 funds held by 31st of March of last year may not have been used within the limitations specified in the relevant legal agreements. Can you tell us what that proportion is, what that portion is, and what the impact that is likely to have? Because I know many of our residents will be very upset about this, and what happens to the funds that weren't used?
So I'll need to come back to you with the detail around proportions. I'm happy to do that in writing. If funds are not used by a certain time, then there is the possibility that they can be reclaimed by the applicant, which is why it's important that we are showing improvement in this practice. I think what I would observe is that there have been cases where projects have still been delivered, it's just not been with some of the Section 106 contributions. And one of the observations I have is that there have been occasions where we secure contributions for part of a project, even if it's a relatively small project like a crossing or a traffic island, because that's the appropriate amount we can get from that development, and sometimes that can sit there for a while until the balance of that, the funding for that project is secured. And I think that's something for us to reflect on in the future about what we negotiate and when. I'm happy to provide that information on the proportions that you asked for.
Yeah, hopefully your insights will be helpful to the new area committees going forward.
I think that is an action for us then to record, but hopefully not in a way the developers can see, a list of the monies that we may have to return, because this is quite concerning that money which was legally required to offset negative impacts of the development been spent, and therefore those negative impacts are sustained by our communities. And I'm glad you mentioned a crossing there, as I'm obliged by my ward colleagues to mention the Camden Lane crossing whenever we talk about section 106. But I'll move over to, is it Councillor McAllister indicating? No, sorry, it's Councillor Harker. Sorry, in that direction.
Thank you, Chair. Back in November 2021, Area Committee 6 approved £60,000 for road safety improvements in my ward. That's seal money. We still haven't got an indication yet as to when that project is going to be delivered. Obviously, inflation would have an impact between the time when the funding was approved and when the project will finally be delivered. So I'm concerned that the effects of inflation over that period of time might mean that the project is not fully funded. Can you give me any assurance on that?
So, since I joined the council in June 2023, this has been an issue that's come up quite a lot, and that particularly for smaller transport and highway interventions, not only were we facing a capacity issue in the team because of recruitment freezes, the impact of inflationary pressures generally meant that our procured framework to deliver smaller schemes was just not available for us to use. The market was not responding. So we've addressed that now. Not only is there, well, you know, that's, I appreciate the point about the SIL, the inflationary pressure on the SIL, the money is still there. What I would say is, as well as rebuilding the team, the Cabinet decision in January 2024 around the use of proceeds from the Clean Air Zone for local and neighbourhood transport schemes should provide additional funds to area committees, and we'll be bringing that through the appropriate committee in due course.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Logan, we should be rolling on a little bit quicker, I think, looking at what's left on the agenda. I'm sure you'll prioritise.
How's team funded? So you mentioned that there was a lack of capacity to deliver the project. Are the council's costs recoverable against that money, or are they funded by other resources? And either way, how is that capacity matched up to the needs of the project?
So the team is now fully funded by recharging to projects. It wasn't before. The recruitment freeze at the time, though, was not just about revenue pressure in the organisation at the time. It was also just about some members might recall there was a possibility of a transfer to the combined authority, which is aborted. That's now resolved. So the team can deliver. It has the ability to flex now, depending on the size of the capital programme, and recruitment continues to be underway.
Thank you. I think that closes section 106, so I'll ask Mr. Lazaridge to move on to the licensing.
Okay, the final summary is around the licensing income review. We reviewed the effectiveness of the arrangements for managing the risks associated with licensing income for taxis and premises, set out the scope of the review there. Again, we provided limited assurance, although we did find quite a lot of positive findings. Some ones which are certainly worth highlighting are the joint working with multi-agency partners. So there is a citywide holistic approach to enforcement of licensing regulations, And also worth noting is the council continues to fund a taxi cop, i.e. a police officer who undertakes compliance street checks on taxis, which acts as quite an incentive in terms of appropriate behaviours. There are well-established licence application processes which generally work well. We did find also some issues. So in terms of enforcement visits undertaken, issues with the system meant that not all visits undertaken were being recorded, and it was difficult for the services involved to establish exactly how many visits had been undertaken and what their outcome was. The services also were not producing annual reports on activity, so again there wasn't any sort of summary of assurance that was available to the licensing committee or others in terms of the enforcement work that was undertaken. We also found that due to resource issues, some bad debts for renewal of licences were not being chased, and that times for processing taxi driver and vehicle licence applications had been longer than target. However, work in the last year had brought those down rather closer to the targets which the services had set for that. We had constructive dialogue with the services involved, and colleagues from those services are here to respond to the report.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair, good afternoon, members. My name is John Martin, Regulatory Services Manager. I'm also accompanied by Kurt James, who is the Neighbourhood Enforcement Team Manager. In respect of the lowlights of the report, the underpinning problem with licensing has been a very high turnover of staff, principally caused by low grades, resulting in really high churn numbers of officers. We also had a recruitment freeze, which resulted in us having to pull in temporary staff. To put it into perspective, in the last 3 years, we had something like 33 temporary staff within the staff base of 12. All of those staff require training and have some really high turnover. And that creates a wholly inefficient service. So that really caused our times for processing applications to be badly affected. Now, thankfully, over the last year, not because of the report, but because we recognised that those services were failing, we've put in place a service review. That benefit is now being realised. So in terms of processing times for our taxi drivers, which has been highlighted here in the report, those processing times have now been halved. So we're currently running at 16 working days for taxi drivers, which is a rolling average, which includes those applications which are incomplete, which really does affect our performance indicator. And unfortunately, we're not able to separate out the performance targets for those applications which are complete versus incomplete applications. Our database just isn't capable of recovering that data. Similarly, with such a high turnover of staff, we weren't able to recover debt. Now we've got a stable base in place for our staff. We've now implemented training for debt management, and now that's in place. So we're in a much better place than when we were when the audit was undertaken. In terms of enforcement, lowlights of the report, my colleague here, Kurt, will just run through some of the actions being taken.
Hi, Kurt James. I manage the Neighbourhood Enforcement and Street Scene Service, and we welcome the findings of the audit report. We've identified, or the audit report identified a range of weaknesses in terms of some of our approaches to how we record information. And part of the weakness isn't so much our problem within our team, but we use software which we call Civica, which has been end-of-lifed, and we've been using that piece of software for 20 years. And that piece of software has been up for renewal for a while now in terms of re-procurement, but that procurement exercise has been delayed, and just as of today, IT have extended the life of the Civica app by another year, allowing us to procure a piece of software that is better for our purposes for recording information. To that end, what we've done as a team is we've created some workarounds to allow us to record our visits and the types of information that we gain from our visits to licensed premises. And in February 2024, we asked the IT service if they could implement some new codes in the Civica app so that we could record information properly and be able to report on the number of activity, the number of licensed visits that we undertook. On Friday, this Friday just gone, IT implemented the new codes, so we now have the ability to fully respond to any requests for reports on our licensed inspections. We've also introduced a number of changes to how we manage our inspections and how we manage the staff conducting those inspections. So we use our senior neighbourhood enforcement officers to make sure that we put checks on the rest of our enforcement officers in terms of measuring making sure that we conduct the visits and record the information from the visits properly within the Civica application. We've also agreed to produce an annual report that will go into the annual licensing committee report, and we've agreed a new KPI for licensed premises visits. So Audit identified the fact that there were 2,140 different licensed premises in the city of Bristol. We have a really busy team that don't have officers dedicated to conducting licensing visits, but within our processes we work with licensing with John and his team and our partners, the police and others, to use a risk-based approach to identifying which premises we visit in line with the regulator's code. And over the last year, 2023 to 24, during that period of the audit, we visited 56 licensed premises. But in terms of the KPI that we've agreed over the last 2 quarters, we've visited 69 licensed premises. That's quite an increase on the number of premises in the last year. So in terms of our response to the audit findings, I think we are moving in the right direction. There's a little bit more work to do, but as a team working together, I believe we are moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll check if councillors have observations. Councillor Logan and then Wilcox.
There's obviously a lot of good work here, particularly on strategic alignment and partnership working, and that's certainly been my experience when I've worked with officers in this area. I wanted to pick up the bad debt issue specifically, because not suspending someone's licence when they've not paid their fee seems like it should be fairly straightforward. And I appreciate there are capacity issues, but that seemed almost like a systems or process issue. So are you confident that that's improved?
Yeah, absolutely. So that process is now in place.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask whether unlicensed music events are actually part of the remit of this audit, because we have in our audit an issue with unlicensed music events happening and how they are actually enforced. Is that part of this report? And are you resourced to actually do anything about it?
That wasn't part of the remit of the audit. Was looking at the inspection of the vast majority of premises that are licensed.
Thank you. I thought Councillor Hucker shoehorned in the most obvious ward item, but you've managed to lead in there. I think you know other ways of raising that. I think we are now done with internal audit exceptions report now. Councillor McAllister.
Thank you, Chair. Just to quickly follow up on Councillor Logan's point about the bad debt. One of the management responses is to a sense checking of all existing bad debt to identify premises which have lapsed. Can I just check what what form does this sense checking take, please? Like how robust is it?
Yeah, so obviously we take a debt management report, we look at multiple debtors or whether they've missed their annual licence fee multiple times, so we are prioritising those and the biggest debts outstanding. I can say since September, when this is reintroduced, the suspension process, we've reduced that bad debt by 20,000.
As a proportion, how much is that, 20,000 please, or as a percentage?
So the current bad debt, I think, on the latest management report was 283,000.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, I do see.
I'd like to ask a couple of questions about the licensing. I'm not sure if it was within the audit remit, but we have a lot of out-of-city licence camps in the city, and there is a potential of a huge income, I would say, to council if those people were licensed locally rather than having to get their licenses from Wolverhampton lately, I think it is. Was there any work done around that?
That wasn't within the scope of the audit, but colleagues may wish to comment.
But probably not in an audit committee. It seems to be a stretch for this meeting here. Any questions around assurance?
I just want to point to the DBS situation, which was an internal audit found, and doesn't seem to be in the management response, as far as I can see. Is there any action on that?
I think it's acknowledged in the report that we go beyond what the national standards require in terms of verifying DBS status of our licensed drivers. So not only are they subject to their initial check, they're then subject to quarterly checks, which goes beyond what the requirements are of the national standards, recognising the importance of it.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just wondering, because of the delays in DBS, there was a lot of licensing issues and a lot of delays in applications. I'm just wondering if that was part of the audit. But that's
the delays with DBS is not the responsibility of the City Council, that is the responsibility of DBS itself.
Okay, members, are we done with this item? Yeah, okay, so the request is to note the report, having scrutinised it. Councillor Logan to move, and Craig up to second that. We are noted. So we are beyond the point at which Councillor McAllister suggested would be reasonable for a comfort break. You probably want to know what's left. I've counted up 6 items remaining, but I consider them all to be fairly fast. I may be Craig or wrong on this. Do we feel like blitzing them? They're all noting items. Yeah? Okay, on we go. So next up is item 11, which is Treasury Management. I think that's it later on my list.
Thank you, Chair. I'm John Clayton, Finance Business Partner for Capital Treasury and Tax. I've got a suite of words which I can share with you, or I can go to the quick bits if you want me to rush through it.
Yeah, some highlights would be
highlights. Okay,
appreciate it. Thank you.
So this is one of 3 reports that we take to Audit Committee and then full Council. First one being the strategy, the second one being the mid-year report, and this one is the Treasury Management Annual Report for 23-24. So Treasury Management is highly regulated by legislation and various codes of practice from CIPFA. This report is purely for noting. There's no recommendations. I can also confirm that all the Treasury activities and indicators were in accordance with the actual authority's strategy and within government regulations. The key points of the report is that, as set out in the Treasury Management strategy, the medium-term financial plan sets out a borrowing requirement of nearly 640 million, a large proportion of that related to the HRA build programme. It was planned to borrow 100 million in 23-24, predominantly to fund the financing of the capital programme. The Council also has a policy of deferring borrowing while it has adequate treasury balances, and therefore the Council only needed to borrow £50 million, and that was during the latter part of the financial period, £20 million in February and £30 million in March, at an average rate of around about 4.43%. As at the end of the financial year, the Council did have liquid investments of 68 million. This course of action minimises the net financing costs of the authority, while also reducing its exposure to counterparty risk, i.e. the risk of default on an investment. The long-term debt of the Council as at 31st of March 24 was 495 million, with an average interest rate of 4.46. And as referred, this includes the 50 million borrowed from the PWB during the year, that part of the year. The Council's debt is mainly made up of PWB loans, which is a central government agency, where they offer preferential rates. We also have market loans, of which £70 million are low-base. That's defined as a lender's option, borrow option, where effectively the lender has an option to increase the rate at regular intervals, and if they choose to, the Council then has an option to repay that loan at par. Now, the Council does not monitor these loans regularly, and if there is an opportunity to repay these loans at par, then we will do. The Council's investment priorities, in accordance with the investment guidance set by government and various codes of practice, is obviously security first, liquidity second, and yield third. The Council's appetite for is, I would say, relatively low. We mainly invest in highly rated institutions, or we only invest in highly rated institutions. These are such as money market funds for local authorities, the Debt Management Office, which is a government agency, and highly rated UK banks. Investments averaged during the year 101 million, during which obviously we finished at 68 million pounds as reference, with an annual interest rate of around like 5% compared to 1.9 previous year. Bank rate started at 4.25 the financial year and rose to 5.25 in August, where it remained obviously to control inflationary pressures. During the whole annual period, UK interest rates across all maturity periods was very volatile, from bank rate to 50-year rate, and this was due to inflationary pressures, conflicts around the world, and the fallout of COVID. So they are the main points of the report. As I said, it's for noting, and all the transactions were in accordance with the criteria set and approved within the Treasury and Strategy. So, any questions?
Thank you for that summary, and the use of balances to defer borrowing seems like a very sensible approach to me. Councillor Hucker.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick one, because I don't want to extend the meeting. I assume the fact that in 23-24, 50 million was borrowed, but 100 million was planned to be borrowed. I assume that will just be rephased into future periods, that's a difference?
Yes, so as part of the P2 monitoring report, we've reported that the programme, the unspent programme, as part of 23-24 will be profiled into 24-25.
Councillor McAllister.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the report. I found it quite interesting. Do you use the microphone? Sorry,
Apologies. Thank you for this report. I found it quite interesting. On the graph on it's page 17 of the report, I'm not sure what the number in big bundles is, apologies, of the public works and loan fraud rates. The 50-year target rate is fairly substantially below all the trendline rates, if I'm reading it correctly. My question is quite simple, I suppose. Just, is this bad? How bad is that for us?
Yeah, so our policy at the moment is to, so the target is set is an indication of what our advisors think we should be borrowing long term at in terms of 50 years. Now, our policy is to actually keep our borrowing short, as economic forecasts indicate that rates will fall from their current high to around about anywhere between 3 and 4%. So obviously the loans that we borrowed in the last part of 23-24, we're expecting to be refinanced at a lower rate, around about 3 or 4%, and that's in accordance with what we've put out in our actual MTFP budget. So we knew we would be borrowing short term for a higher rate, and that was already built into our cover financing budget.
Thank you. Okay. There being no further observations, would anyone propose to note this report? We have that from Councillor Hucker and a second from Councillor McAllister. I think we are noted.
Chair, can I question your assertion that we've got to rush through these meeting agenda items, because they're presented to us as an audit committee to actually verify and give due diligence over, and if we're rushing through them, we're not doing that. So can we either have them rescheduled properly so that we've got time to actually give them due diligence in the meeting, or can we extend the meeting time, please?
I agree with you that we're here with a job to do, and I haven't refused anyone's observations or interjection. So I don't think that to date anyone has been prevented from speaking at this meeting, and I know that we're not going to finish at 5:30, and I intend to finish the agenda, and I don't want to curtail, but members will have their own priorities for what questions they think are important and when they want to go home. So thank you for that observation. If you'd like to propose at any point that an agenda item is moved to a future meeting, then we can put that to the floor. But otherwise, we'll move on at the same rate, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair.
So the next item. Sorry, Mr. Baird.
Apologies, Chair. I'll have to leave now, unfortunately, because other plans for this evening. I have to take my son to football. Sincerely apologize, but yeah,
Understood.
I have to go. Thank you very much.
I also have a child expecting me based on leaving at 5, so I will do that.
Fair enough. Right, well, I think we still have quorum, and we'll move on to the debt and arrears position. The key point here is that one of the appendices was exempt. If anyone has questions on that appendix, then we would have to move into a closed session. So please say that before asking the question. But I'll ask for the report now, please.
Hello, my name is Graham Clapp. I've got a name badge. I'm the Head of Revenues and Benefits, and I'll be presenting a brief overview of this report. So this report has already been covered at the Strategy and Resources Committee, and you will have all had sight of it. So I'm going to therefore give a brief overview of the findings rather than trawl through the entire report. It comes under the remit of the Revenues and Benefits Service because I have an income collection team with responsibility for collection in several, but not all, of these debt areas. I did originally have colleagues from other services available to answer questions. I've got one left from parking, so that's new. So I'll be deferring to them if it becomes technical, or I don't know. It's important to stress that debt reporting is a snapshot in time. So some of the amounts that are quoted here include amounts that are billed but not actually due. Unfortunately for the report, our various IT systems sometimes make it difficult to extrapolate that in the detail. But we have done that wherever it's possible. And I also do want to highlight, before going through the report, a couple of developments that have happened since the report was written. Firstly, the creation of a corporate debt management group, the first meeting of which took place last week and was chaired by Finance Director Tony Kirkham, with representatives, if I can say, of all the debt areas covered in this report attending. That group will meet regularly to look at how we work smartly and collaboratively to improve our overall debt position. Additionally, we've formed a finance improvement task group, which is chaired by my finance colleague Stuart Booth. That also met for the first time last week, and that will look to sharpen practices in finance and accounts receivable around debt. Going forward, that group is going to meet fortnightly. So, just very briefly to headline figures on the report. As I said, you will have all seen this, but I'll just very quickly go through the type of debt. So we've got accounts receivable with an outstanding figure of £88.6 million, but that is one of the ones where it does also highlight in point 3.5 that 30.9 million of that was billed but not yet due at that time. Then in addition to that, we've got £51.8 million with regard to council tax, 14.3 million with regard to business rates, overpaid housing benefit debtors of around 9 million, and overpaid housing benefit, we've recovered from benefits of a very similar figure of 9 million. Housing revenue accounts, current rent arrears, former tenant arrears and leasehold of around 15 million. 3.5 million with regard to temporary accommodation, and then we've got from parking services, penalty charge notices of 2.2 million, parking services, bus lane enforcement 2.3 million, and clean air zone of 32.1 million, coming to a total of £229 million. There's also covered further down in the report the amount that's been written off, which I will scroll down and get to in a second. And that's it really. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take them or I'll pass them on.
Thank you. Any members? Question? Yes, Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Chair. Accounts receivable, 88.6 million outstanding. On page 286, it says that the total amount billed in the previous 12 months was 174 million. So I made that as equating to over 6 months outstanding, because I believe the payment terms are 30 days, but if you just divide 88.6 by 174 and times by 365, you get 186 days. So that's 6 months outstanding, which seems like a long time considering that the payment terms are 30 days. What are the main things within there? Can we maybe have a breakdown of it?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to supply you with a breakdown.
Thank you.
Any other comments? In my notes, I have the word increasing written down and a page reference that doesn't seem to tally up. So, yeah, maybe I'll phrase that as a question. Are our debt arrears getting better or worse in pound sums over time?
I think the honest answer to that is it's better in some areas and it's worse in others. So it's clear, for instance, in council tax it's slightly gone up, but in other parts, business rates, for instance, our collections improved and we've got arrears that have gone down. So unfortunately, it's a bit of a mixed picture.
I'm just scrolling up and down pages now. Is there a total section? That would be under section 3, would it, current position?
Yeah, the total is the 229 million that I mentioned in the previous.
And how does that compare to the previous year?
I'm not sure that the report's compiled exactly the same way last year, so I can find out, but I couldn't give you off the top of my head.
I think that would be useful context for next year's report at least. Are there any other comments, or shall we move to note this report? Anyone care to note? Councillor Blankett's up and Councillor Harker. So you know what that's like. It's like an auction. Okay, it's another ticked off. So I think we're now working down in numerical order to number 14, internal audit priorities. So that is to note the priorities that are being set out for us. Is there anything I'd like to introduce?
Yes, Chair, thank you. We have a rolling plan which means that we have to come to the audit committee on a quarterly basis to agree priorities. This enables us to make sure that we are dealing with emerging and current risks. We have consulted the audit committee and management, I don't have any other comments to make, but just to confirm that we have the resources to deliver the projects that we put forward. We will bring in November the Q4 priorities for community as well. That's what you.
Just to say, given the length of time this meeting is taking, can we try and configure the amount that we're reviewing the meeting so that it can be completed in time? Yet still investigated thoroughly.
I absolutely agree. Of course, this meeting had a start time published. It also had a calendar invite that was set to a certain amount of time, although not published to everyone else. And that was set out before we knew that there were 19 items on the agenda. So certainly we've been set up with a lot to do today. But if there are no comments on the report, shall we move to note it? Yeah. Approve? Sorry. We're approving. Approved. Seeing nods there. Councillor Lamb and Councillor moving and seconding. The next is the annual report of local government and social care ombudsman decisions, which is another note and then refer to full council for their consideration as well.
Thanks, Chair. So just a couple of comments for me to introduce the report. So this is the report ending March 2024. The main thing says, I think this is positive, although the number of complaints has increased. The council has dealt with 35% more complaints this year compared to previous years. The numbers that were referred on to the ombudsman don't equate to as high as an increase. So 33 upheld cases out of the 187 investigations compared with 29 last year. Regarding the comments in the annual letter, about 7 cases where remedies were not completed on time. 3 cases were in education, 3 in adult social care. The heads of service have kind of just given comment on those is purely around capacity issues in terms of getting those remediations enacted on time. There's just one final point to note from me in that there's a discrepancy in the report in regards from what the Ombudsman has published. The website states that there's an uptake rate of 83%, which is worse than the UK average. However, that's based on an incorrect number of investigations. So it should actually be 79%, which is in line with others. But unfortunately on that one we don't have the opportunity to query the Ombudsman, so we have to just, it is what it is in terms of how they publish that. The overall escalation rate is just under 2% of overall cases, and less than 0.35% of upheld cases. Just one final note from me is that the new complaint handling code that is referenced in the letter, this is in reference to the Local Government Social Care Ombudsman aligning theirs to the new Housing Ombudsman Code, which went live in April. And the Council was already making steps to implement that, and that's been ongoing since the beginning of 2024, both within my central complaints team, but also the housing services as well. So there's no specific action to be taken from this letter, but as always we'll continue to look to improve our complaints process where possible. And the team have retained their international standard accreditation for the 9th year running, which is an externally independent audit around our complaints process. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you. See, Councillor McAllister, I'll just reference that we did receive a statement about freedom of information requests, which the committee to bear in mind. And I'd actually like to start myself asking, I understand our FOI response rates could do with improvement, and what are we doing to improve that rate and fullness of response?
So happy to try and answer that. So that's not in relation to this report. This report is separate to the FOI, but happy to try and answer that FOI question.
I think I've spotted it, but if you don't think it's relevant, then I've got to stick to the agenda. I've told other people off for that, so I'll move over to Councillor McAllister.
Thank you very much.
I will just note, I found some of the appendices tables quite confusing. I think that this long list of random numbers is not so helpful, especially when it's raw numbers and not rated at all by population. I think it would be, but obviously we get what we're given from the Ombudsman. I noted that according in the letter from the Ombudsman, it flags that in 7 cases of complaints they've looked into, the recommendations weren't completed within agreed timescales, and this has been a persistent issue. So could I just check, why did this happen? Why is it a persistent issue, and what are we doing to address it, please?
That's fine. I did reference that slightly in that when the heads of service for the relevant service areas were asked to comment, the main response we got back was around just pure capacity issues from service areas. As you can see, the 2 highest ones are in the what used to be directorate, so SEN and adults, which again 2 areas that we're well aware of are struggling from a capacity perspective.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilcox.
Yes, I'd like to agree with Councillor McAllister about the presentation of the local ombudsman's spreadsheet. It's impossible to read. Fortunately, there's a link to the actual spreadsheet data, but if we present this spreadsheet in this form to full council, nobody will be able to understand it. It needs to be rethought about how we actually present this, because it is important to know that Bristol is 33 on the list of number of complaints, and you can't work that out from this spreadsheet, and it's not stated in the report. So yeah, we really do need to work on the presentation of this to make it accessible to councillors. Please.
That's fine. If I can have a chat with you afterwards in terms of what would be slightly more appropriate for full council, any ideas would be appreciated. Like I say, we're a bit stuck in terms of how the Ombudsman presents it to us, but if we can present it in a better way, then I'll take that on board.
I think we may need to piece together the excerpts of spreadsheet that we were given, glue them all into a big rectangle, crop out the blank pages, and then shrink it again. Perhaps.
I'm sure you can project it on the screen at the moment.
Yeah. But there will be experts for that. Thank you for that recommendation, and I think that's an action. And Councillor Alec. In which case, are we ready to note this report and refer it over to full council? Yep. See that indication from front bench. Great. 2 left now. So that is Risk Management Annual Report and the Corporate Risk Report Update. So item 17, Risk Management Annual Report with Mr. Adamisi.
Good evening. This is the, we normally bring the annual report at least once in a year to give an overview of what we've done in the last year. So this report represents the summary of activities during 2023-24. It covers the background with the approach, the improvements we've made, and some recommendations, how we've implemented the audit recommendations as well. I'll go straight to what we did during 2023-24. So we had, at the beginning, that's 9 tracks, risk management within the corporate risk register. During the year, we have 12 deteriorated and 16 improved. 14 remain static, and some of them have actually moved on now because we are now in Q3. And the same year, we have 7 new tracks added, that means in terms of escalating new risk to the corporate risk register. While 17 were de-escalated. Now, when we say de-escalated, I think we'd explain that even though we're still managing them, it's been actively managed at DMT level. And so by 31st March 2024, there were 24 corporate risks left. We had an opportunity is something that we'll not be able to kind of report loads more, and I'm hoping that by the end of this year we'll have more opportunities coming to our corporate risk register. We had one, was also de-escalated. and all the external civil contingencies were also discussed because we improved the mitigations. So these are some of the activities we did. Quarterly risk report on key strategic risks, we kept that going. We continue to maintain, manage the risk management on the source software. We redesign the whole system, making it more user-friendly. For the last few months now, colleagues they find it easier to navigate. They can use it. Reporting is better. Also, we created an interface that's quite appealing to all as well. We conducted a bespoke awareness session for colleagues. We introduced last financial year interconnectivity. It was the first time we introduced in the council, and you'll have seen the report the last few quarters. We're now beginning to look at dependencies of risks, where some corporate risk linked to the other, and it's helping. Also in terms of looking at the budget, getting the value at risk as part of our budgeting plan. We introduced the DM2 Assurance Performance Dashboard, and we started tracking emerging risks. We implemented 10 out of 11 recommendations. Almost 11 actually, but the other one fell between the 2 calendar years, so we couldn't add it to it. So, and the table listed all the actions, and also what we're planning for 2024-25 is equally now highlighted clearly in terms of direction of travel and the things we're going to do. So that's the overview of the annual risk management progress we've made in the council.
Catherine, have any questions on that review risk?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm gratified to see that CRR 55, which we received a report at the previous audit meeting, children placed in unregistered versus related risk has actually reduced.
Can I just
improved.
The report.
Yeah, hold that one. Sorry, I know everything's out of order. So on item 17, risk management annual report.
Apologies for leaping ahead.
We're all keen. So, but thank you for your report. Look back over the work over the last year, and it was quite a short item, so we may have escaped observations from councillors. Are we?
I did read it, you actually answered all the questions in your presentation, so thank you.
It sounds like we're ready to note this report. Thank you. There's no objections, that's noted there. So, the very last item, which was item 18, corporate risk report update, is also with Dr. Abnusi, and it does indeed get better.
I'm happy to take questions, but also happy to go through the critical ones. I think we still have one critical risk. We are actually on these, and I checked the mitigation just before the meeting. Some of the Appendix A mitigation was something like 40%, but actually colleagues are progressing to finish the mitigations for these projects for the HRLs and stuff. There's lots and lots of actions going on there. Also this quarter we have 3 improvement risks, which is good. One thing which, listening to this committee and at the back of your request over the last few months, we have now introduced materialized risk. And I'm sure it's something that each time I come you ask me, can you tell us which risk actually materialized? But what we've done is to distinguish materialized risks from crisis. So when we define this as materialized risk, something has occurred, we're dealing with those issues, but equally, the uncertainties around the risk is still ongoing. So we have to retain it in the risk register, acknowledging that the event is materialized, but we're doing something about it. And that will help us, also the colleagues, to be able to focus more on those issues. So for example, the CRR 55, and then we had deep dive. So beginning to look at some of these stated there, you can see the correlation between focusing on the fact that they materialize, but also we're doing deep dive, and then the action plan. So beginning to see the trend of improvements and how colleagues are responding to the mitigations as well. There's one proposed for escalation. We proactively propose this risk for formation, really, because we, in the spirit of ensuring that we're proactively anticipating potential exposure to the council. So we've proposed CRR 63. Lots of work going on there as well. And just to create that one is that there's a lot of uncertainties around our assurance cover, but it's all, we're not at a great crisis stage yet. And then section 3.12 look at the interconnectivity, which we highlighted different risks contributing to CRR 13. As we're managing the mitigations for all these threats, it will be interesting to see how they're equally working with the CRR 13, and it's helping colleagues to pull together in terms of understanding the implications of what's happening A, service B, and how the whole corporate we're looking at it together. That's the overview we have. We have 19 new risk mitigations, so every quarter we try and highlight new risk mitigations. That tells us that if we're not convinced that the existing mitigations are not effective, we ask colleagues, what else can we do? And what else can you suggest? How do we move this threat or this opportunity forward? So they will recommend more mitigations and controls that are strengthening. So seeing those numbers and seeing this increase is kind of assurance that colleagues are now actively engaged and they know that we're going to challenge them pretty much. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Wilcox first and call others.
Thank you, Chair. So going back to CR 55, I'm gratified to see that the risk on that has actually reduced or improved, depending on your parlance. But there's no detail about why the risk has reduced. We've got a couple of actions that aren't due to be completed till March 2025, but there's no actual detail about why the risk has reduced. I really want this risk to be reduced, but I'd like to understand what that has.
Do you feel qualified to answer that one? Or do we need to make an action for the relevant service lead to get back to us?
Yes, I will. I'll come back to you.
Your answer? Go ahead.
I think part of it was the fact that there was a lot of attention on the deep dive. The colleagues are now looking at correlation between this risk and other risks. And the action that the fact we're in the middle of that discussion to be able to bring other operational risk strategy they're doing within this risk as well. And I'm happy to provide more details at the next report so that you get the assurance of what's been done.
So we're going to get more data on this risk to actually qualify it?
Yes.
That's really useful. Yeah. Thank you.
That's an action then for CRR 55. Other observations? Councillor McAllister?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you again for this report. I apologise to everyone here, but I do have a fair few points to raise. On the CRR 9, possible failure of safeguarding vulnerable children, I think we're all very happy to see that that risk has reduced, but it's reduced by its likelihood reducing by 1 point, which I know is the same as it was in Q3 of 2023. So I'm wondering, do we think this might be the start of the trend of declining risk, or is this just a fluctuation in this item, which I know we're all very concerned about given the news over the last few months?
Again, I think the reduction in the probability is the fact that all the efforts is ensuring that the likelihood of this incident happening is being reduced. But should it occur, we're still going to see the same impact. And I think colleagues were here last time explaining the fact that this is going to be something we have to keep an eye on, even though we're not careless about it. But it's one of those things that anything that happens to children is going to hit national media. So it's just for us to make sure we're safe while we're still working hard on the mitigation itself. I think that's the reason why we've just been cautious.
Thank you. I'm happy to pause and let other committee members go ahead.
Go for it. Yep, I think you've got the floor.
Okay, well, I apologise again, then. This is not in a particular order, so apologies for that. CRR 58 possible failure to adequately maintain and replace general travel infrastructure. I note that there's a litigation impact that has been listed here, alongside an increase in complaints, which then has, both of those have an impact on staff time, but litigation in particular can lead to some financial risks. So have we worked to identify any financial liability the council might have as a result of that?
So that's the highway maintenance.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll come back to you on that, but I just want to highlight that there are two actions there which we have seen in July and the one in August. They've actually been implemented completely now. So as at today is 100%. The timing of the reporting wouldn't give us that full view. So funding option presentations been done, and I think colleagues are back. So they've commented that has been implemented already as at today. But again, I'm happy to bring details to you just to update where we are with that.
Thank you.
We had discussed previously the distinction between the technical issues to be raised in the individual policy committees and the assurance pieces. So I'm not sure you'll stay focused on assurance and process.
Apologies, Chair, thank you. In which case, sorry, I'm just jumping around this report. CR7, potential cyber security attacks. One of the risk consequences is listed as fines denominated in euros, and that's enforced on behalf of the European Union. Can I just check if that's accurate, please? Or if, I'm not familiar with the legislation myself.
Your question whether that consequence is accurate?
Is it meant to be pounds, or is it genuinely we could be fined in euros?
I'll confirm.
Thank you. Again, sorry, just bear with me while I find the right spot. Yes, it's CR48, inability to meet affordable housing needs. There hasn't seemed to be an acknowledgement of one of the risk causes, which to my mind would be the social housing ombudsman decision, which has sucked up a lot of the available capital, which would have gone into developing affordable homes and so on. I mean, there's a lot of media interest in this recently. Should that be reflected in the corporate risk register as well as a risk cause, or is that beyond the scope of this report?
I will confirm with the colleagues. Come back to you on that as well.
Thank you. Just a general point. There's a lot of the corporate risk register entries which have got quite low progress on their mitigating actions, and a lot of their actions are either overdue now or look very likely on paper to be overdue in the near future. And I was quite concerned, I think this is exemplified on CRR 60, failure of HRA stock, where we've got a building safety is 50% complete, due date 30th of September. Fire safety item is 10% complete, and that was due yesterday. A fire evacuation strategies is 22% complete, and that is due in March 2025, but it seems bizarre given how important that is that hasn't happened already, or even at the time of the blocks.
So most of the actions progress, because at the time of writing this report, I think it was middle of, just towards the end of August, and it was all the time frame. So I'm happy to provide all the updates, the percentages of that particular CR. Actually, I've checked them online on a live document today, and colleagues have actually completed some of them.
Okay, thank you.
I think some of these detailed ones perhaps helpfully refer to colleagues who can progress them through the relevant scrutiny.
Okay, thank you. Well, in which case, just one point about the document. The Appendix A1, the penultimate page of that, it refers to the cabinet lead and cabinet level. So I think that will need updating to reflect the new committee model of governance.
Thank you.
Thank you for that detailed scrutiny. Are there any other points? Certainly wouldn't refuse any instructions. I think we're ready then to note the report. Yep, let's consider the report noted, which brings us to the end of the agenda. You are probably surprised about. Thank you for following this 90-item agenda. I think an action on future chairs is to make sure that the agenda order is circulated to list committee members before the meeting starts. This was agreed before I stepped in, but we've worked very well with it. Thank you for your time today, remaining officers and members, and I'm going to close hopefully my only meeting in charge.
Thank you all.
Okay.